All right, so in this video, I just wanted to look back at some of the great NFL regular season games, specifically between about 2011 and 2016. That was kind of like my heyday when it came to the NFL and have a little nostalgia remembering these games. Guys, I was an early adopter to the NFL Red Zone. I think I got it in 2011 when I was really young. We had it. And, obviously now it's really huge and everyone knows about it, everyone does it. But this is a lot of nostalgia. I do think the NFL was better in like 2013, 2014. It was just, I don't know, there was just something special about it. So we're going to go back and look at games, starting with this one. This was a 425 game, the two best teams in the NFL. Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers. I mean, it is a shame. The Packers, somebody said in the comments, I was looking at this game, watching the highlights, and someone said the Packers win every meaningless game and they lose every meaningful one, because realistically, you're looking at this game 9-2 versus 8-3, the two best teams in the NFL, the Packers winning it. I mean, what does it really do in terms of overall career relevancy for Aaron Rodgers? Nothing. Like, it does nothing for the Packers. No one remembers this game, but this was Rodgers versus Brady, and this was the game where at the end of it, Aaron Rodgers ended up throwing. The Patriots were down to 0 timeouts. They were down by 5. Rodgers threw on like a 3rd and 4 and completed a pass to Randall Cobb, and Brady went ballistic on the sideline. He absolutely lost it. And then there's that great CBS scoreboard. I love that scoreboard. But yeah, I mean, Rodgers in this game, 368, 2 touchdowns. Brady was decent as well. This was just a cold weather game, nice game. You can see 26-21, 425, late in the last day of November, November 30th right there at Lambeau Field. Really nice vibe, 3-hour game. And I mean, Green Bay was just better, dude. I know like the history books will say Green Bay didn't make the Super Bowl, but at the time it was very obvious. It wasn't like, oh, Green Bay lucked into this win at home. No, they were just better than the Patriots at that time, and they outgained them by almost like 170 total yards in that game. That was a fun one. This is a very interesting game. So this was a Sunday night game, San Francisco at New England, and you can see the NBC, the old scoreboard they used to have. This game was late December, December 16 is when San Francisco visited New England. This was the game Colin Kaepernick, the quarterback for the 49ers in 2012. So this was 2012. This was like the height of Kaepernick. And guys, Kaepernick, if you're someone younger, I mean, he was a beast. Now, obviously, with what he's tried to do, like make himself a martyr, he fell off pretty quickly. And that's what happens with the NFL. You'll have players who are literally at their peak, top 5 player at their position, and then 2 years later, they're nothing. That's just what happens. But Kaepernick at his peak was a really, like, a crazy good dual threat quarterback. He was just so lengthy and so like fast. This was when Harbaugh was the coach. But yeah, the Patriots end up scoring 24 points in the fourth quarter. They lose 41-34, a very rare higher scoring game for the 49ers at that time. If you guys remember the 49ers with Jim Harbaugh, they always played lower scoring games, always. This game was almost 4 hours. It started at 8:30. It was almost 4 hours. But yeah, there's Kaepernick, 25 pass attempts, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. Brady with 65 pass attempts. Frank Gore, not a great day for Frank Gore, just 83 yards. Danny Woodhead out of nowhere goes for 61 yards, 2 touchdowns. Crabtree, remember when Crabtree had that crazy playoff run? I think that was with Kaepernick in 2012. And then Brandon Lloyd randomly goes 10 for 190. It's fun to look back on these games. This is another game in Lambeau. This is the Steelers and the Packers. So this was a rematch of the Super Bowl. But this is the game where Matt Flynn started. So, and it started snowing throughout. It was a beautiful vibe. You got the light snow coming down, coming onto the field, accumulating a little bit. It never really snowed anything crazy. The only thing that's really unfortunate in this game, Aaron Rodgers not playing, but I believe this was when Le'Veon Bell was at his height, and he scored a late touchdown. Higher scoring game, even with Flynn. 38-31, the Steelers won, and that was a 425 game. Those 425 games are always the best because you get to see, the sun going down, the game starts, it's still light out, and then it goes down periodically, especially later in the season. This game, the 2015 game, this is when Cam Newton was the MVP of the season. They were undefeated, the Carolina Panthers, going to New York. This was a 1 o'clock start, December 20th. So this is when, look at the field, dude. The shadows are crazy for a 1 o'clock game. That's because the sun was barely up because it was the winter solstice where the sun set at like 4 o'clock in New York at this time. But yeah, this game was crazy. Josh Norman, OBJ, multiple people have said it, like looking back on this game, both of those guys nowadays, if that happened in 2023, they would have gotten ejected early in the third quarter. There's no way they would have both remained on the field, but this was the game where Carolina went way up, like 35-7 midway through the third quarter. The Giants came back, and then Carolina kicked a field goal at the buzzer to win 38-35. But yeah, it is crazy that OBJ didn't get ejected. He caught a touchdown at the end. He finished with okay numbers, 6 for 76 and 1 touchdown. How about Ted Ginn? Good for Ted Ginn going for 2 touchdowns. But, Cam Newton's numbers, 45 pass attempts, 345 touchdowns, 8 carries for 100 yards. If you had him in fantasy, Rashard Jennings with a big game randomly. Eli Manning, not really efficient, 45 pass attempts, but did have 4 touchdowns. But yeah, that was a crazy game for sure. This is a game, Denver's offense. I seriously think Denver's 2013 offense might be the best offense, I've ever seen in the NFL. This was just Eagles versus Broncos, early season, sunny day, 4:25 game, 2:25 Mountain start time. Peyton Manning, Demaryius Thomas, Julius Thomas, Knowshon Moreno, Eric Decker. Remember that team? And they win 52-20. It's literally a college score. The Denver offense was just so crazy, and they would just be automatic. You could take a look. Peyton Manning, 427, 4 touchdowns. I remember LaShawn McCoy was a beast in fantasy. But yeah, Denver, there's like multiple examples that year of Denver in 2013. Just a ridiculous offense against an Eagles team that wasn't very good. The Eagles weren't horrible that year or anything. How about this game at the Coliseum? So this is interesting. Eagles at the Raiders at the Coliseum before the Raiders moved, well before. This was 2013. I specifically remember this weekend. This was a crazy weekend in the NFL. It was like November 3rd. I was actually on a school trip to DC, and I was, getting updated on all these games on my phone. And I just remember Stephen Ridley also having a huge game, I think against the Steelers, I want to say. But yeah, this was the game Nick Foles threw 7 passing touchdowns against the Raiders, and they won 49-20. They had 49 points in the first 3 quarters, and then didn't score at all in the fourth. There it is, Nick Foles, 22 of 28, 406, 7 touchdowns. Terrell Pryor, he was a good dual threat. But he did throw 2 interceptions that game. Bryce Brown, that's a pretty good rushing day, 7 for 54. Deshaun Jackson, Rashard Jennings on here again. But yeah, that was just an interesting game because Nick Foles with all the touchdowns. Nick Foles was good. He ended up winning a Super Bowl. He kind of had a weird career, Nick Foles, where it looked like he might be an elite franchise quarterback, but it kind of fell off for him really quickly. This was the bloodbath on Sunday night. The divisional game, Chicago at Green Bay. This was such a weird game. It was so, nonchalant. It didn't even feel like the crowd was cheering that much for the Packers at Lambeau. It was weird, but 35-0. Yeah, Aaron Rodgers threw 6 touchdown passes in the first half, and the second half of this game, I remember this, it was legitimately like a preseason game. It just didn't matter. They didn't even play Aaron Rodgers. I don't even think Aaron Rodgers came out for the second half. Well, he came out, but I don't think he actually went into the game in the second half. I've never seen anything like that on Sunday Night Football, where an entire half of a primetime window later in the season, in early November, it just didn't matter at all. It was just completely meaningless. It was interesting. They were up 42-0 at halftime. That's virtually impossible for an NFL game. But yeah, Aaron Rodgers, all of that came in the first half. 315, 6 touchdowns. Jordy Nelson, a forgotten receiver. And Matt Forte, a forgotten superstar fantasy running back. Yes, Matt Forte. This was like the last great Edwards-Jones Dome game for the St. Louis Rams before they moved. So they were hosting Oakland. It was a 1 o'clock game. It's on CBS because Oakland's an AFC team going to an NFC team, and St. Louis annihilated them. They were up 28-0 early in the second quarter, 38-0 in the middle of the second quarter. Trey Mason, the Auburn great. What a day that is. I wonder how many people picked him up in fantasy after that game. 52-0 was the final score. This was later in the season. I mean, both of these teams were not good. The Rams 5-7, the Raiders 1-11. This might have been the year where, this was 2014. I'm wondering if this was the year where they got Khalil Mack with like the 4th pick in the draft, the Raiders. I mean, the Raiders were always a bad team, but outside of that Jamarcus Russell year where like they got the actual number 1 pick and picked him, they never got like the number 1 or number 2 pick. They would always get like a 5th pick, the 6th pick, something like that. And it was kind of the same thing with the Rams until, remember when the Rams traded up to number 1 to get Jared Goff? It turns out Jared Goff's actually a good quarterback, but that was kind of a funny move. But either way, I mean, 52-0 is crazy. Oh my goodness, Doug Martin, the muscle hamster. Yeah, I remember this game. I actually didn't watch this game. I want to say I went trick-or-treating with my friends, but then I looked at the date of this game and it was November 4th. So I'm wondering if they might have postponed the trick-or-treating. This is when I was younger, obviously, like my last year, trick-or-treating or whatever, but I think they might have postponed it. And they did it on the 4th on a Sunday night because I remember coming back and seeing the muscle hamster, Doug Martin, randomly. There's another game involving the Raiders. I mean, the Raiders were in some pretty cool games. Look at this game, 35-32. But yeah, Doug Martin had a ridiculous game in this one. This was also November of 2012. I mean, that's when the NFL was really at its peak. The Raiders scored 22 points in the 4th quarter to try and make it a game. I mean, Carson Palmer just going crazy for 400 yards, 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Doug Martin, 251, 4 touchdowns. It's just sad. I mean, Doug Martin was a pretty elite fantasy back for like 2 or 3 years, but dude, he fell off so fast. It's like the running backs are just crazy. The fall off of Zeke, the fall off of Todd Gurley, Le'Veon Bell, Doug Martin. Who remembers Zach Stacy? I mean, it's just sad to see. How about Marcel Reese? I think Marcel Reese was listed as a fullback or something. The dude had 8 catches for 95 yards and a touchdown, probably all in garbage time. You've got to respect it. You really do. Oh, this game. Tony Romo versus Peyton Manning, Jerry World, dealing with the sun because it's early in the season. This was one of the worst games ever at AT&T Stadium in terms of the sun glare. I remember this, like early in the game because the sun's not set yet, because this is a 4:25 game, so it's 3:25 in the central time zone, so the sun isn't set. You won't get any sun problems, but they've got a giant window, and this was a really high scoring game, but just the sun reflection onto the field, I don't remember it ever being that bad in any other game. I'm not sure if it was just like the perfect day where the sun is like smack dab in the middle of the window, but it was really bad, the glare of it. And yeah, just Tony Romo ends up throwing a late interception, and that's like the narrative. But dude, I think Tony Romo was underappreciated. I mean, he was a really good quarterback until he had those injuries. Denver ends up winning 51-48 in just a crazy high scoring game. Peyton Manning 414, 4 touchdowns. Romo 500 passing yards, 5 touchdowns. This was the crazy year for DeMarco Murray too, I think, 23rd. Or was DeMarco Murray's crazy year in 2014? It might have been in 2014. Yeah, I think it was in Well, it might have been in 2013, but DeMarco Murray had a ridiculous year. Julius Thomas. Remember when Julius Thomas came out of nowhere and just became an elite tight end just randomly? Terrence Williams from Baylor. I mean, he was a decent number 3 receiver for Dallas there for a few years. I do remember him. And then this game, the return of Tom Brady coming off of the Deflategate. Tom Brady had a 4-game suspension. New England went 3-1. Remember when New England faced Arizona in week 1 on Sunday night with Jimmy G? I think they won that game, but that was like when Carson Palmer was on Arizona. But yeah, Tom Brady comes off a suspension in Cleveland. and then just destroys the Browns when the Browns were horrible. 33-13. The Browns went to 0-5 in that game. And I think the Browns started Cody Kessler, but he got injured. I'm a Browns fan, so I believe that's who they started. But Isaiah Crowell, Gary Barnidge, he was an elite tight end for about a year. Chris Hogan goes for a big game. But yeah, Tom Brady, 400 yards, 3 touchdowns. Just a crazy game and a return. This was a strange game. I don't even know how it was snowing in Foxborough in week 6. That's like early October. It's snowing, but the Titans taking on the Patriots. The Titans coming in at 0-5. It was weird because of the snow. It was 39 degrees, but because of the wind, it was more snowing than rain. They called it a wintry mix, but yeah, this was the game where both the Titans and the Patriots wore their throwbacks, and you had the surprise snow, and the Patriots just annihilated them. I mean, it was 59-0 in the third quarter. And then, I mean, they didn't try at all. They just wanted to run the clock out, so they ended up winning. They could have won this game, honestly. They probably could have scored 2 more touchdowns and won this game 73-0 if they really wanted to. But this game actually, because this is 2009, so this is going back a ways. I really don't remember watching this game. I think I might have been a little young for it. Yeah, I think I might have gotten red zone in like 2011, but this game started at 4:15 because that's how the NFL used to do it. Originally, they would have a 4:05, 4:15 game. Then they pushed it to 4:05 and 4:25. I certainly like the newer format because it just gives you more time. I mean, the stats on this game, Vince Young, the leader, 0 for 2 for 0 yards and an interception. Brady, 386 touchdowns. I mean, Chris Johnson having a really good game there. Wes Welker, 10 catches, 152 touchdowns. And then you take a look at the Titans passing. Kerry Collins, 2 for 12 for -7 yards. I'm not even sure how that's possible, honestly. But those are just some fun games to look back on, reminisce. There definitely were some really good NFL games in the regular season that people forget about just because there's so many games every single year. But either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on X. Link to that's always in the description.